everyone, it's Allen Ramos. All right, so radio and TV host Cody Alan's memoir, Here's the Thing, Lessons in Listening, Life and Love, is out November 9th. He's opening up about his career, his marriage, coming out, mental health, and so much more. And as you all know by now, Cody is definitely a part of the GLAAD family, and I'm so excited to be chatting with him right now. How are you?
Good, Anthony. Good to see you always. We've been talking about this book, I feel like for years, you and I, and then finally it's out. I heard another author say it was sort of like giving birth when a book comes out. Like it's like a 3-year gestation period. I feel like I've been like in a 5-year gestation period or something, but it is coming. So yes. November 9th.
I remember we were texting when it got announced, and I was like, I mean, this is great. But I do want to talk about this, the idea of listening, because you said really that listening was, led you to a place of self-discovery. It helped you come out. Can you elaborate on that? Because I think listening is something that we all need to do more of for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's there are several dimensions to that. First off, I realized that I grew up listening all the time. Like I grew up in a house where my dad played, he had an incredible vinyl record collection, played music all the time. And I really fell in love with music early. And I started listening to the radio. The DJs between the songs would talk, and I was like listening to what they had to say, the stories behind sort of the artists and things. And so with that sort of as the backdrop of my early life into what I do now, where I interview the stars, a lot like you all the time, where it's constantly, somebody, country music star to talk to, and that kind of listening, which is important. And then ultimately listening to yourself, because I realized over time I was tuning out the one person who mattered the most, and that was me. And so, yeah, it was about eventually listening to my own heart. That led me to sort of write the book and create this sort of overarching theme that was all about listening.
I love that. Thank you. And, thinking about that, you and I met around 2017 when you were, about to come out. But I read this book, and there were so many parts of your life that I consider you a friend, that I had no idea. Like, I didn't know these things that you had gone through, and didn't know these parts about you. I mean, how are you feeling now that, you put it all out there on paper? The rest of the world is going to really get to know who you are.
Yeah, I feel really good about it now, but I'll tell you what really led me to think seriously about writing a book and putting it all on paper for people to read word for word. The conversations I had, for example, the people I turned to when I was really struggling, as well as sort of the real life and sort of vulnerable things that I thought I'd never really share. When you are gay, at least I felt like I would always take sort of that secret with me to the grave, and that I'd never reveal it. And then once I came out, like you mentioned, in 2017, I started realizing like I kind of have a bit of a responsibility now to speak up and to share more and to stand up for those who don't have a voice, who don't have a platform like I do. So I really wanted people to hear the whole story, Anthony. And now that you've read the book, I know you get it. Like, there's a lot up to the day you come out, and there's a lot that happens afterwards that you begin to realize you didn't even know anything about, but you learn. And so I wanted to walk people through the steps of like how I got to the decision I did, and then the great things that happened afterwards, the overwhelming love, and some of the struggles that even happened afterwards that I think anyone who comes out has to deal with. Telling the whole story, getting it all off my chest has been so good. And I'm really happy for people to have the chance now to read it.
We are too. And one of the themes that really flows through the entire story of the book is this, your relationship with religion and being a person of faith. And I know at GLAAD, we're doing a lot of work and putting a lot of emphasis in changing the conversation, because still so many people think that you can't be a person of faith, you can't believe in God, and also be part of the LGBTQ community. And I know there's a part that I wanted to read that I highlighted here. You wrote, I was always trying to be what I thought God wanted me to be. I was conscientious and determined to play by the rules. And if that meant somehow casting aside my internal wiring, I was willing to do that I was willing to do that to be a part of this thing that I believed was much bigger than myself. What is your, thoughts on, do you consider yourself a religious person still? Because I know you obviously, you talk about being a part of the Mormon church and then, growing beyond that. So I think it's an important conversation.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that I love that passage you just read, because I do think for a long, long time I was trying to do what I thought God wanted me to do. And I think a lot of people throughout their lives, they think God wants this or that for them. And you sort of cast aside, again, like I said in the passage there, the internal wiring, that exists. And so for the time I was very young, I knew that I was gay. So I cast that aside. I distracted myself. I was super ambitious, as you read in the book, and try to do, great things with the talent that I was given, and all those things to sort of cover up this core that was on the inside. So over time, I evolved to a point where I knew that I needed to come out, that I needed to speak up, and that I needed to be myself, 100% true to me, and authentic. And I think that the struggle with religion, I thought was daunting, that somehow God would not accept or love me if I were gay. But he created me, is what I began to understand. And I say he, maybe it's a she, Anthony, I'm not sure. But I will say that I will say that God has bigger plans than sometimes we realize. I thought after I came out that somehow my life would be disrupted, that God would not accept me, would not love me anymore, that I somehow wouldn't be blessed or have things. And that's not the case. In fact, I feel more love in my life than I ever have before. I want to be more like Christ, in a giving spirit, and loving and compassionate to others. And if anything, coming out has made me more able to do that, because I can empathize better. I can be 100% honest, which before I couldn't be. You feel like you're a fraud a lot of your life when you're carrying around this sort of weight that I did for so long. And that integrity, that sense of honesty and decency and kindness you're able to show because you've been where you've been and you understand what you do, makes you, I think, a more godlike person.
That was really something that I connected with, because I come from a religious family, and I remember having those feelings of like, no, you can't be this, because God won't love you, like that's not what he wants. And I really, and I think a lot of people will, especially with your fan base, will really connect to that. So I mean, I did connect with a lot of things. On a lighter note, I remember when you talked about secretly subscribing to men's underwear catalogs. I remember doing that with Abercrombie and Fitch. Do you remember those? Because those were pretty sexy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. I would, yeah, I would want to shop at Abercrombie just to get the bag, that had the naked, half naked body on. But seriously,
Yeah.
my mom, after I came out, I had a conversation with her, like, hey, did you ever suspect that I was gay? Or did you ever think that maybe he wasn't like the other boys in some ways? And my mom said, no, I never had a clue. We talk about that in the book. And I was like, I can't imagine that she never noticed that every month I would hoard a magazine. And, the cliche is for many boys to have a Playboy and hide it under the bed. I did the exact same thing, but with men's underwear magazines. And so I would make sure I got to the mailbox first to grab the magazine, so she or my dad could never discover that I was sort of had this secret passion, so yeah, but my mom never knew. Crazy.
Same. I know. I feel like my mom said the same thing with me. Like, I think I assumed that there were, and she's like, I never knew. I was like, really? Okay. But that's a bold move, by the way, and a risky one. You have the magazines come to your house, but you did. You got away with it. So, but I also, leading up to your career at CMT, obviously, which so many of us know you from now, had so many years all over the country: Dallas, Salt Lake City, Florida, obviously Nashville. And you got to meet a lot of these artists early on. And I know Keith Urban is one of those people back when he was with The Ranch, before we all knew who he was. And he wrote the foreword to your book, and I know was really a big support system for you early on. Was he kind of the first big celebrity that you came out to?
Yeah, he was the first sort of artist friend, I like to say. I call myself sort of a sub-celebrity. I sort of get really close to the celebrities, but not quite their status. So, but I come right on the edge of knowing these people really well. And so Keith is one of those, though, I've gotten to know as a really a true friend just over the years. Like, really good guy. He's such a decent human being and a good soul. And so there have been some conversations I've had with him where we just really connected. And I knew he got the idea of the book, which was, being present in the moment, truly listening to those around us. Because you're right, he is the first artist friend I came out to, and it sort of happened spontaneously, Anthony. As I talk about in the book, like, I did not walk into the studio that day to tell Keith Urban about myself. I walked in to do an interview. We finished up the interview, and he asked how I was doing. We just started, talking about personal stuff, how life's going, what was going on in my life, his life, whatever, and I think I hemmed and hawed, as you read in the book, I hemmed and hawed a little bit about like what was really happening with me. And I was like, oh God, I think I'm just going to say it right now, even though it's going to come out here. I'm gay. And I just told him, like, right there on the spot. And his reaction was incredibly kind and sweet and loving. And he, again, people can read in the book his reaction. And then he sent me like the greatest text in the world that night. Where he quoted Lin-Manuel Miranda from, of course, Broadway fame, and said, "Love is love is love is love is love," and that's what it's all about. So a really incredible moment for me, and it confirmed to me that I could like go forward and figure this out. I was like, if Keith Urban can accept me the way I am, then maybe others can as well. So it was really an impetus that led to other conversations, that led to other real moments with other people in the business and industry, and sort of, led me down the pathway and confirmed I was on the right track at that point. So I'm so grateful he wrote the foreword. Like, I don't even, he's so talented, as you probably know. Like, I don't even deserve to know Keith Urban, but somehow I do. So.
Now, he is magical. Like, there's something just beyond the music, just that the energy in person just seems like the greatest.
Yep.
One
Smells
of the
great.
Well, go ahead.
Well, he smells good. He has like really good everywhere he goes. So every time I'm around, I'll shake his hand, or I've given him a hug before, and like hours later, I can smell my shirt and there's a little bit of cologne still left.
I mean, I love that. One of the other things that I really connected and identified with, that so many of us, before we are ready to come out and before we're really ready to accept who we are, sometimes we can kind of go completely in the other direction to kind of hide that. And I know you were put into a position when Ellen DeGeneres came out, and you had to play the other side of the conversation, saying that you didn't think that she had to on this radio show. I spoiler alert, you did get to have a nice meeting with Ellen later. But what was it like to think back on that? Because writing this book, there like you said, there were some missteps, but it was a part of the process.
Yeah, there definitely were some moments I wish I could get back. People say
No
that they
Twitter
have
or anything back then, thank goodness. So.
Yeah, I really tried to hide it, and I hid it so well that even when I was doing, like you say, a morning radio show, we had to have a conversation that management of the station, the programmers in charge, thought needed to be a balanced conversation where both sides were represented, which I think is absolutely correct. Unfortunately, I was the guy who had to side with anti-Ellen, at the time. Yeah, it felt icky to me. I remember like walking away from it, just feeling cringing that I even, said what I said, but I was kind of playing a character for the sake of the show that I was on. I regret that had to happen, but I learned from that, and that cringiness, if you will, that really helped me to grow later, because Ellen's become just such a great hero to me and so many others, such a trailblazer. And by the way, when I was growing up, there was no Ellen, so. There was no Will and Grace. There was not a GLAAD in my life to show me that there were great role models of people on TV and movies and talk shows and radio who were like me. I didn't know a kid who was gay. I didn't have a relative who was gay, Anthony. Like, this was the generation. This is the generation I grew up in. That was a huge struggle. And as much as it's a different world now, with a lot more love and acceptance, I still feel like there's a lot of young kids who probably have that problem still. Like, they don't really know anybody who's like them. And so in some ways, Ellen's a great example of, blazing a trail, but hopefully in country music, we're also blazing some trails for those kids who may not have a representative.
Totally. And you definitely are. And I just thought, like, what would it have meant to you if you would have been, the young Cody in, listening to country music early on, prior to making it, and see someone like TJ Osborne back then come out, a
Yeah.
big country star. What do you think that would have meant to you then?
Um, I think it would have meant a lot because the fact that there's someone on a stage that, I can relate to, I could have related to. Since TJ came out in January, he and I have chatted a little bit about being sort of representatives in country music. There's not a whole lot of us, and how he has had the same experience I have, where people have come up to him after shows or before a show at a meet and greet and saying, "Hey, thank you for coming out. I didn't know that there was anyone like me in country music." And now, before I felt uncomfortable being out in that crowd, now I feel like I belong. And those are pretty strong words.
Yeah.
I've had that happen a few times. Quite a few of those examples in the book as well, where people come up and feel like, man, there was no one like me before, but now there is. And that's a beautiful thing, to think that you've made some sort of difference in making someone feel more comfortable in what we love, country music.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember before we even met, like before you came out, I was a fan of what you were doing at CMT, and then, like to see you then, and then to, live your truth and come out was such a big deal even for me. But and that's what happens. And it's so great that, like with TJ and you and Ty Herndon, of course, and so many others, it's, it's definitely happening. I want to talk about, the book comes out on the 9th. We're doing a special virtual event with no big deal, Dierks Bentley, everyone. And the good thing is, if you purchase a ticket and you go to codyallen.unisonevents.com, you can buy a ticket to this virtual event between Cody and Dierks Bentley, and a portion of the proceeds will benefit GLAAD. But how excited are you to have your good friend Dierks, kind of just in conversation, talking about the importance of listening?
Oh, it's going to be awesome. I've known Dierks for a long, long time. Before he was had a hit, what was I thinking was his first big song back, I think in the early 2000s ish. And so we met way back, and we just hit it off. He loved music, I love music. We had a lot in common. So he's always been great at answering my questions. But the tables will turn on the night before the book comes out because he's asking me all the questions. So I'm ready to be grilled by Dierks in sort of a different way. So people can be a part of that. I think the Cody Alan book.com website also will work if it's just easier for people to get to. But yeah, please get a ticket for it.
CodyAllenBook.com. Yes, but we're going to have it all in this caption anyway, but yes.
Very good. So I'm anxious for that to happen. It's going to be a really fun night, and I'm so thrilled to have Dierks sort of part of that. And
that's going to be the night before the book comes out, right?
Yep, sure enough. So people can watch it live happen on Monday night, November 8th. And then, as you mentioned, a portion of the proceeds will also benefit my friends at GLAAD. I really wanted you guys to be involved. Listen, when I came out in 2017, GLAAD was there. You guys came to CMT. You sat with me. You made what was a difficult day so much easier because I knew I had a support system. So listen, I always want to give back over and over again to GLAAD because you've done so much for me. And I know what you do for others as well. Again, representing and being the representative for people who don't have voices. And so I'm just so proud to always be involved with you guys. And so I'm glad we can make that happen.
Well, we definitely appreciate that. And thank you for saying all that. Before we wrap up, one of the other parts that I really appreciated and learned more about is this really great blended family that you have. Just, to give anyone context, you were married for some time. You are a stepdad and also a father to 2 children. And then obviously came to your comfortability and wanted to come out. But between, your fiance Trey now, and then, your ex-wife and your children, I've seen you all on vacation together. How cool is it to kind of just be redefining what, modern family can be?
Oh, it's awesome. I mean, I never could have dreamed it would be so great. I hoped one day we could get to the point where we could be the sort of awesome, modern, blended family as you describe it. But yeah, it took time. I attributed all love. There's an overwhelming sense of love between all of us, including my ex and me. We, from the beginning, tried to get through it together, knowing that we had truths that needed to get themselves worked out. So I say in the book, it's an evolution, not a revolution. That for us from the beginning, when I first told her way back in 2009, till we were able to finally sort of unravel things and get our family together in the way you see it now. It took a little bit of time, but it took a lot. It's all comes back to love. Sort of letting things prevail. And I think if there's a sense of love and like let's work together on something, that it always works. And so yeah, we do go out. We spend vacations together. We'll have Thanksgiving together again this year. And my son last year, after our incredible Thanksgiving with our whole family, and my son, daughter, boyfriends, girlfriends, my wife and her ex-wife and her boyfriend, and of course me and Trey and our group. So all of us together into one house. My son said afterwards that was the best Thanksgiving ever. So sort of thing. It's so worth it in the end.
I love that. Bringing up Trey, another little nugget from the book. Unbeknownst to her, Carrie Underwood was kind of the matchmaker between you and your fiance, which is, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, we met together. We met in Atlanta. She was doing like a pop-up concert, and I was doing, what I do for CMT, which is host and also interview her. I interviewed her backstage. We had a nice conversation. Then I went out to meet some of the people, and we did some camera, B-roll sort of camera stuff in front of the theater, and that's where I met Trey, and we shook hands and took a photo together, and then started corresponding. And it's like, one thing leads to another. So months after that, we finally actually met up and really hit it off right from the start. He is for me, a soft place to land every day. I have this kind of high wire job that's constantly crazy. And so he's nice to come home to and just a sweetheart, and I love him. So he's in many ways a direct opposite of me, but they say opposites attract. So here.
I don't know about completely opposite, but I know what you mean. And the two of you are a great couple. As we wrap up, one of the other things I want to just put out there for people that, you really do give really great advice on your career. You give people tips on how to do interviewing successfully, and all of that comes back to listening. So I do want to point that out. But what do you hope that people that read this book, what do you want them to take away from your story?
Well, I want them to see that there's hope in whatever your struggle is. Not everyone's going to have to deal with what I dealt with, my challenges, but I think we all deal with something. And for me, whenever I was struggling, facing, coming out and like fear of rejection, I think no matter who you are, like you always think, well, maybe this won't be received well. And that's what we perceive often, at least. And for me, in coping with that fear, I turn to friends and family, coworkers. We talk about the artists like Keith and others in the book. And I think it's important for people to know that whatever your struggle is, search out listening ears who can help you through it. I think that human connection is so vital to working through whatever issues and challenges you may have. I prefer challenges, by the way, not issues. But nonetheless, yeah, I hope people will walk away with that sort of sense that there's hope in all of this. And finally, the truth will set you free. I know it sounds cliche, but for me, it certainly is true. I feel like my life is so much better living truth, and also that love can overcome anything. I know, again, it sounds a little cliche, but I do think that's the truth that lies in our story, in my family's story.
Well, listen, you can't go wrong with that, and I completely agree. And just a reminder, everyone, Cody Alan's memoir, Here Is the Thing, Lessons on Listening, Life, and Love, will be out November 9th. And just a reminder, if you want to check out his conversation with Dierks Bentley, virtual conversation, that will be happening the night before on the 8th. And you can go to codyallenbook.com, get all the information there, get your ticket. But yeah, that's everything. But Cody, it's so good to see you. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for the time.
Anthony, great to see you. Always. Thanks for your friendship over the years. You're just the best. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to see each other soon in person.